From the Blues Hotel Collective, welcome to Blues Moments in Time, where every groove holds a memory and every moment echoes the truth of what came before. Today, we rewind the reel, trace the footsteps, and revisit the chapters that shaped the blues. Here is our host, Kelvin Huggins.
Welcome to Blues Moments in Time, the podcast dedicated to exploring the rich history and cultural significance of blues music. Today, we zero in on January 11 and tracing how it echoes through the stories, the sounds, and the struggles that shape the blues. Let's start with the cultural landscape. On January 11, 1912, in Lawrence, Massachusetts, thousands of immigrant textile workers walked out of the mills after their wages were cut when the work week was shortened by law. History remembers it as the Bread and Roses strike, a moment when people who barely spoke the same language stood shoulder to shoulder and said, "We deserve more than survival." Now, if you listen closely, that's the blues sentiment. Long hours, low pay, dangerous work, and the stubborn belief that your life is worth more than what the boss says it is. Those mill workers weren't singing 12-bar blues, but the emotional script is familiar. Hard times, bad treatment, and the hope that tomorrow might be kinder. Decades later, when black southerners carried the blues into northern factories and mill towns, they stepped into a world already marked by labour battles like Lawrence. The blues became a way to turn that grind into melody, to give shape to the feeling of being used up and still standing. January 11 also gave us a different kind of cultural turning point, the birth of Lawrence Hammond in 1895. Hammond wasn't a bluesman, he was an engineer, tinkering with clocks and motors. But when he turned that synchronous motor into the heart of the Hammond organ, he unknowingly handed black churches, barrooms and blues bands a new voice. Suddenly, you could get a big church-sized sound out of a relatively compact electric instrument. That organ would go on to cry, shout and testify behind countless singers, blurring the lines between Sunday morning and Saturday night. On January 11, the blues quietly gained one of its most powerful tools. Now, let's turn our attention to the political climate. That Lawrence strike on January 11 wasn't just about wages, it was about power. Immigrant workers, many of them women and children, challenged the idea that they were disposable. They organised, marched, and faced down police and soldiers. In doing so, they helped write a new chapter in American labour politics, one where the poorest workers demanded not just bread, but roses, dignity, beauty, and a life worth living. Blues has always lived in that political shadow, even when the lyrics never mention a politician's name. Songs about leaving the plantation, hopping a freight train, or working in a steel mill are really songs about systems, about who owns the land, who controls the factory, who gets paid, and who gets left behind. January 11 reminds us that the blues doesn't float above history, it grows out of it. The same forces that drove workers into the streets in 1912 would later drive black families out of the Jim Crow South and into the industrial North, where the blues plugged in, turned up, and told the truth about life under capitalism. Even events like the creation of the Michigan Territory, noted on January 11, foreshadow the industrial Midwest that would become a magnet for black migrants and a crucible for urban blues. The politics of land, labour and industry set the stage, and the blues supplied the soundtrack. Now, of course, no discussion of blues history would be complete without exploring the music itself. Musically, January 11 is stamped most clearly by technology. Lawrence Hammond's birth in 1895 eventually led to the Hammond organ, the machine that changed the sound of 20th century music. By harnessing a synchronous motor and a bank of tone wheels, Hammond created an instrument that could mimic some of the grandeur of pipe organ without the cost or the size. For black churches, that meant you could fill a sanctuary with sound. even if you couldn't afford a pipe organ. For blues and R&B bands, it meant you could bring the same churchy swell into a club, a juke joint or a studio. Think about all the records where a Hammond organ hums under a blues singer or takes a solo that sounds like a preacher who's had just enough whiskey to tell the whole truth. That's January 11 in action, a birth date that turned into a sound. The organ became a bridge between sacred and secular, between gospel shouts and blues moans, and it helped define the feel of soul blues, blues rock and beyond. And then there's the live circuit. On January 11, 2008, Bob Enos, the longtime trumpet player for Roomful of Blues, died in his sleep while on the road in Georgia. Enos had joined the band back in 1981 and spent decades blasting bright, high-note trumpet lines over their horn-driven arrangements. Roomful of Blues specialised in jump blues and swing blues, keeping alive a style where horns are as important as guitars. Enos's playing, sharp, powerful and consistent, helping carry the big band blues energy into the late 20th and early 21st centuries. His passing on January 11 is a reminder that the music isn't just about legends on old 78s, it's about working musicians in vans and buses, playing one more set for one more crowd. January 11 has also marked the beginnings of life for some incredible blues musicians. Front and centre is Slim Harpo, born James Isaac Moore on January 11, 1924. Harpo came up hard, losing his parents young, working as a longshoreman and construction worker before turning full-time to music. He started out as Harmonica Slim, playing in Baton Rouge bars and backing his brother-in-law Lightning Slim, before producer J.D. Miller and the Excello label helped him step into the spotlight as Slim Harpo. Harpo's sound was swamp blues at its finest, laid back, hypnotic grooves, simple but unforgettable riffs, and a harmonica tone that felt like humid air over still water. His debut single, I'm a King Bee, didn't storm the national chart at first, but it became a standard, so much so that the Rolling Stones cut their own version, helping to carry Harpo's Louisiana vibe into the heart of the British blues explosion. Rainin' in My Heart showed his gift for bittersweet balladry, while Baby Scratch My Back climbed to number 1 on the R&B chart and number 16 on the pop chart in 1966. A rare crossover triumph for a blues artist of that era. Now, what makes Slim Harpo's January 11 birth so important is how far his influence travelled. British bands like the Stones and the Yardbirds borrowed his songs and his feel, and later American acts like ZZ Top picked up his minimalist, groove-heavy approach. He was never a flashy virtuoso, but was made a master of doing just enough and doing it exactly right. January 11 also gave us other figures orbiting the blues universe. Alto saxophonist Tab Smith, born in 1909, worked in the space where jazz, R&B and jump blues meet. His horn lines helping to define the sound of mid-century black dance music. Trombonist Wilbur de Paris, born in 1900, carried New Orleans traditions forward in ways that often overlapped with early blues repertoire. And Lawrence Hammond, born in 1895, shaped the instruments that would carry blues and gospel into new sonic territory. Together, these January 11 births remind us that the blues is not just singers and guitar players. It's horn sections, inventors, and band leaders, all contributing to the same river of sound. Sadly, January 11 has also been a day of loss. On January 11, 2008, as we mentioned earlier, Bob Enos of Roomful of Blues passed away in his hotel room after a gig at just 60 years old. Enos wasn't a household name, but within the blues world, he was a pillar, a trumpet player whose high notes could lift a whole room, and whose consistency made him the kind of musician band leaders dream about. He'd been with Roomful of Blues since 1981, appearing on nearly all of their albums after the early years and lending his horn to recordings by artists like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Pat Benatar. His death hit the band hard. They described him as a family, not just a colleague. Enos's passing on January 11 is a chance to honour all the sidemen and section players who keep the blues alive night after night. They may not always get their names on the marquee, but without them, the music would be smaller, thinner, less alive. The blues is a community effort, and dates like January 11 remind us that every loss leaves a space in that community. That's all the time we have for today's episode of Blues Moments in Time. January 11 gave us labour battles and quiet inventions, swamp-soaked harmonicas and screaming trumpets, births that changed the sound of the music, and losses that remind us how fragile this living tradition really is. Join us next time as we continue to explore the fascinating history of the blues.